We'll call to order the meeting for February 12th, 2024. Joyce, do you want to do roll call?
Sure. Amagashi is absent. Gorman? Here. Jetzer?
Here.
McKee?
Here.
Mertens?
Here.
Perry? Farmer Eden? Sanders?
Here.
Shimming? We have a quorum.
We have an item to approve the minutes for December 11th, 2023. Do I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Second?
I still second.
Minutes are approved.
Oh, hold on. We need a little discussion here.
Oh, you had something to change?
My name doesn't even appear in there. I think I'm listed as Joe
I saw that.
Maldonado.
I did see that. On the roll call.
Yeah. Thank you.
So corrected. The next agenda item is public appearances for non-agenda items. We do not have any. Resolutions and ordinances is the fifth agenda item, which we don't have. So we'll move to our first speaker, which is Rebecca, and I'm going to probably mispronounce your last name. Giroux? Oh, you got to take it off the mute.
I do, and that is perfectly correct.
Perfect. My rudimentary
Yes.
French, maybe, I don't know, came in handy. You are from WIDA, correct? And is going to discuss, discuss some of the new programs that were proposed.
Definitely. So let me just see if I can share my screen for you all. Okay, looks like, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, sounds great. So yes, my name is Rebecca Giroux. I work for WIDA, Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority. I'm a Community and Economic Development Officer, and I cover an 18-county region in the state of Wisconsin, which is primarily in the central southwest, from La Crosse, Trempealeau, Buffalo, Crawford, Vernon, all the way over through Dane, Dodge, and Jefferson counties. And so today to talk about our new resources from the bipartisan legislation package. So just a couple of items. I'll try to get through the material. You know, if there are time, I do have questions. I will say that if there are like really project specific questions, like would this project qualify or would this qualify? Some of those answers I may not know because it might be like project per project. But if it's general questions about the programs, then those are questions that I can definitely answer. And if there's things that I can't answer, I have a notepad. I'll write them down and I will make sure to get the information and follow up with all of you. And so I'll just kind of go through quickly the new tools that we have. We did do a first funding round late last year, and then talk really specifics about our new programs that we have, and then answer some questions. And so again, a little bit about WIDA. We are the state housing authority, and our vision is that all people in Wisconsin have an affordable place to call home, and our mission is to help Wisconsin thrive by expanding access to affordable housing choices. So our new tools and a little bit of background here. I'm sure you all have heard that about mid-2023, there was a bipartisan investment in housing of $525 million, which will be allocated through WIDA. And this is part of the 2023 to 2025 biennial budget. And with that $525 million, there will be a total of 4 new product programs coming out. And we do have, and maybe I can forward some links to Joyce, but we do have some progress updates that we have for the programs, as well as we have an email subscription that you can subscribe to. So anytime anything gets published about the new programs, you will be notified via email. So here's just a snapshot of our new loan program. So I'm going to really be focusing today on the top 3. And these are more so for communities and developers. So we have our vacancy to vitality loan, which converts vacant and underutilized space to housing. Our Restore Main Street, which focuses on rehabbing second and third floor upper space above, commercial space into housing. And our Infrastructure Access Loan, which covers the cost of installing, replacing, upgrading, and improving public infrastructure that's going to serve a housing development specifically for workforce or senior housing. And the last one, which we're still in the works of, this is a home repair and rehab. program, and this will be more so for the consumer. So this will be a program that the consumers will apply for to make improvements to their current home. And so we did have a first full round. So within just a few short months, these funds were announced in summer of 2023. We had term sheets for 2 of our programs by October, and then we had an open application cycle in November of 2023. So we worked pretty fast to get these 2 programs running. That was for our Restore Main Street and our Vacancy to Vitality. So we had our application process open from November 20th to December 29th. We had 6 completed applications, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you figure there's a lot of things that have to be in place to make the project ready for these funds, and because they came out so quickly, 6 was a good target for applications. And we did award 3 of those for a total of $3 million. So 2 apartment communities in Dane County will provide 130 affordable homes, and 1 affordable community in Waukesha will provide 203. So total of 333 new homes. And I do have the names of the Dane County developments as well. There was a press release that went out, but I can share if you guys are interested in the names of those. Let me just get those. And we do have this post on our website where you can see who all applied and then which ones were eligible for funding. So those were Summit Ridge apartments and the Canyons, and both of those are in Madison. We did not receive applications for the Restore Main Street in this round. And then I'll talk later, there will be some subsequent funding rounds as well too. So some key takeaways here, I'll just go through these quick because they're mostly for the developers that are applying for these programs. But, think of the application as a checklist instead of a complex spreadsheet. We try to make it easy. We do have a sample application on our website. Part of these legislative dollars each program is defined by an act, a legislative act. So there are some requirements within the act verbiage that kind of give us a box to work around. And one of those requirements is that the project may not benefit from tax increment district financing, but it may be located in one. And under the Vacancy to Vitality, the entire building must be converted to housing. And as far as financing and how the loan works, because these are loan programs, the WIDA loan for these programs cannot be used to replace a primary loan that's already been closed to kind of like pay off a loan that's already been closed. However, the loans may be used for projects where the construction has started, but the primary loan is not closed. So those are just some key takeaways. And then what municipalities need to know, and this will start to kind of really come into play and make sense once we talk about the programs. But the housing element of the comprehensive plan has to have been updated within the last 5 years of the application date, which I believe I was looking, and Fitchburg was recent within the last 5 years, correct?
Yep, we
Yes, correct.
updated our plan in 2019, I believe.
2019. Okay, perfect. So, we'll just check on those dates there for future funding. The DOA's website has a section that would optimally be updated but are not required, and then upload the new plans and updates and amendments to the DOA's online portal. We rely on that list of the updated comprehensive plan. We don't do a separate review for those plans. We just rely on what DOA has on their files. Ensure that the comprehensive plan is updated at least once every 10 years and is in compliance with other state statutes. Ensure that the municipality has cost reductions in place for the development that have taken place after January 1st, 2023. So this could be, waiving impact fees, reducing parking requirements, anything that lowers the cost for the developer from a municipal standpoint. And there is some flexibility and latitude in this and calculating what those cost reductions are, but showing the math in that process is key. And then, if necessary, changing zoning to allow residential housing or as a permitted or conditional use. And then there's several resources. We'll be hosting some more webinars like this. And then, of course, the league has some great information as well as the DOA for comprehensive plan information. So I'll kind of move quickly and then I'll kind of pause between the first 2 programs for questions, and then I can talk about the infrastructure. And if there's any time where like, hey, we're running out of time, please let me know. And I can kind of shorten things up too. But our Vacancy to Vitality loan, about $100 million of the 525 is for this program. It provides funding to help cover the cost of converting vacant commercial buildings into workforce housing. The purpose, it's subordinate debt for converting vacant and underutilized properties to housing, which has to be all housing. And eligible borrowers are any developer other than a municipality that converts this space into residential use for affordable housing. And the eligible uses are to cover the construction cost of the housing, including demolition. The commercial building has to be vacant for at least 1 year or deemed underutilized. It has to have 16 or more units of housing. And again, these are some of the things that are required by legislation, not necessarily a WIDA requirement, but a legislative requirement. The land does have to be currently zoned to permit residential use. There are a couple other nuances. I mentioned one about not receiving financing from a tax increment district, but also it cannot have received federal historic tax credits. And all other development funding must be secured, and all permits and approvals, except the final building approval, have been obtained. The municipality, again, has to show that there has been a reduction in costs since January 1st of 2023. And then, of course, that housing element updated within the last 5 years for the comp plan, and the comp plan within the last 10 years. So for this, there are some set asides here. So 25% of the funds go to housing that are going to support seniors, and 30% are set for communities of less than 10,000 people. And then as far as the affordability components, because this is what it's about, affordable housing, and this will be kind of a replicated in the other programs. So I'll just cover this once, and then I'll just kind of quick review it in the other programs. But any rental housing, so apartments, let's say, have to be reserved for families that are earning 100% of AMI or less. And annual housing costs, so the rent that they pay, cannot exceed 30% of their income or of that 100% AMI. And all apartments must meet requirements and remain affordable for 10 years. For single family, so home ownership options, homes are reserved for families earning up to 140% AMI or less, and annual housing costs cannot exceed 30% of 140% AMI. And then again, that home must be owner occupied and can't be sold within 10 years for more than the selling price of the original affordability plus inflation adjustments. All single family homes must be constructed and meet those requirements. The loan amount. So this, again, it's subordinate debt. So this will be in, second lien position to a primary lender, but the amount is a maximum of $1 million per project, or 20% of the project costs, including land, whichever is less. Now the rate, so typically the rate is going to be 3% for a general fund, or it could be 1% if the project is in a municipality with a population of 10,000 or less, or 1% if it's senior housing, which one person in the household has to be 55 or older to be considered senior housing. And the rate, again, is determined by application round. And the term and the amortization is going to match whatever the senior debt or the primary loan is for this program. Any questions about the vacancy to vitality?
Just a quick question over here, Rebecca. It's Olivia. Hi. You said that the vacancy vitality was for communities of 10,000 or less.
The programs are statewide, but there is out of the funding available per program, there is some set aside. So it's reserving 30% of the funds for communities of 10,000 or less. Yeah, but it is a statewide program.
Okay, because I was confused because Madison got, a couple of them. Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, good question.
I have a question.
All right, so the next, go ahead.
So on the vacancy to vitality, when you're taking an unused commercial building and converting it to apartments, can these be?
I think the audio cut out for me for a second there.
Yeah. Convert.
Hello?
Let go of the button.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm a novice at this. So when you're converting, say, a commercial space to a residential space, do you have the ability to convert that to home ownership condominium style apartments, or are those apartment styles only for a rental? You can't do like a condo, a flat condo kind of thing.
That's a great question. I know that there is an ability to have a home ownership option within the vacancy to vitality. That would have to be for 16 homes. I would have to check on the condos just because there is like a condo association and things like that. So there's a little bit difference, but how it was traditionally posed was that, if there was a vacant building, it could be demolished and then at least 16 single family homes could be built. But that's a great question. So let me write that down and I will get back to you all on that.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. All right. So the Restore Main Street loan, again, this is a competitive loan process. This is designed to increase the supply of those apartments for workforce households in those underutilized floors above commercial space. So talking the second level, the third level of those housing spaces. Financing is provided by WIDA through a revolving loan fund that is subordinate to other funding. So the purpose, again, is to rehab second and third floor rental space over commercial space. Eligible borrowers are the rental housing property owners. So it doesn't have to be like a really experienced housing developer. It could be just a property owner that has some apartments up above or the potential for apartments up above. And the eligible uses would be to make improvements such as repairing the HVAC system, electrical, plumbing, walls, roofs, adding insulation, or remediating mold or lead paint. And so some eligibility requirements for this. So the second and third floor space has to have been, it does say 1 year here. I just double checked that before anybody didn't change it. It doesn't have to be vacant for 1 year. It just has to be vacant or underutilized. That 1 year is only for the vacancy to vitality. The current land is zoned currently to permit residential use. It has not claimed state or federal historic tax credits or received assistance due to an active TID. All of their development funding must be secured and permits and approvals other than the final building inspection obtained. And then again, the municipal requirements are the same. Another caveat to this is that the building has to be at least 40 years old and no significant improvements have been made in the last 20 years. So that's another nuance with the Restore Main Street eligibility. And then again, there is that, the historic and the TID is all that same requirement that's legislatively bound. So for this, the set aside, there is a 30% set aside for projects in communities of less than 10,000 people. When you're talking about the pool of funding, which is $100 million, there is no set aside for senior housing in this particular program. The affordability is the same, 100% AMI. We really stick to rentals here because of the second and third floor uppers is primarily conducive to rental housing. And so it cannot exceed 100% of that AMI, and the affordability has to be maintained for 10 years after the initial occupancy of that program. The loan amount is $20,000 per unit or 25% of the total housing rehab costs, whichever is less. And the rate is similar to the vacancy to vitality at 3% for the general and 1% in communities with less than 10,000 people. And then the rate is determined per application round. The term is the lesser of initial occupancy, plus the 10 years and the term of the senior debt, and the same with the amortization, the term of the senior debt, because this is meant to be more subordinate debt. So the timeline, this is what we've done so far. So we had our loan term sheets available. We had our competitive round open, the first round, and then we had our funding allocations. Our second funding round, so we're going to be planning 2 funding rounds per year until the funds are exhausted. That will be in the spring, so April-May timeframe, and then another time in the fall, so October-November timeframe. So the second funding round is set for April or May. Developers that wish to apply need to request access to, we call it Procorum, which is our online application portal system. So that's where they would submit their application. So they need to have access to that prior to submitting the application. So there's essentially 2 deadlines for a developer. One deadline we have set in place to say, hey, you need to request your work center access for Procorum by this date. And then secondly, your application is due by this date. And again, we publish this on our website. Once we know those exact dates, we send out an email blast. So everybody registered to get those emails will get that information. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions on the Restore Main Street.
Rebecca, I just have a couple questions. So I think one of the qualifications is the building has to be 40 years old or older. Is that right?
has to be at least 40 years old.
But you could not have applied or not in the process of applying for federal or state historic tax credits, right? And then you can't have made any capital improvements to the structure in the last 20 years, is that correct?
Significant improvements, it says, to the second and third floor of the building in the last 20 years.
Do you know how that's defined? Because I can't imagine that you wouldn't have made a capital improvement in 20 years. But again, how is a significant improvement defined? Do you know?
Let me check on that quick. These are some really good questions.
And one of the questions, has anybody applied for the loan yet? Have you had?
We have not. We have not had anyone apply for the Restore Main Street loan program yet. We did the 3 applications that we approved were for the vacancy to vitality program.
Okay, those are the questions I had.
Yeah, let me just check to see here. I don't believe that we have that in our FAQ, and I believe the legislation just says the significant improvements. I actually, sorry, I'm just gonna pull this up quick. I have like tons of tabs open for a lot of these questions. I believe it just says significant improvements within the last 20 years, but I'll see if I can get more of a definite answer for exactly if that is defined anywhere or if we're able to define that.
And Rebecca, I just have another question, and it's actually probably refers to vacancy to vitality, or maybe all of them, I'm not sure, but I think there's a reference to wanting communities to be able to prove that they've somehow expedited the process, the development process. Can you give me some specifics on that?
Yeah, so, just some general examples would really be, we want to see that there's cost saving reductions made for the development either or after January 1st of 2023. So that cost saving could really be calculated as long as it can be shown by a calculation. That's what we're asking for. So, reducing impact fees, expediting permitting processes, different things like that. And just pulling up really quick, we have kind of a listing of some of those examples that I can share for you. And again, as we continue to get more applications and rounds, we'll probably have more. But some of the examples that we've been given, which we have on our website, are voluntarily revising zoning, subdivision regulations, or other land development regulations to increase density, expediting approvals, reduce impact water and inspection fees, reducing parking, building, or other development costs. Are just some examples that we have provided.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Good questions.
Hey, Rebecca, it's Joyce. Is there any requirements for ADA compliance for any of these rehab projects?
The compliance would be really on the actual development and with the current building codes that are out there. If that helps.
I've got a question as well. So you'd said there were $3 million was given out for the V2V loans, and that was able to provide housing, 333 units of housing. So assuming that the $3 million is 20% of the total project cost, that comes out to like $45,000 per unit. Going from like an empty warehouse to something that's inhabitable by humans, that seems really magical to me.
Well, so the cost for here, let's go back to that slide just so I can the overview of the first round. So because this is subordinate debt. So because there is that cap on the per project amount, so the max is $1 million per project or 20% or no greater than 20% of the total project costs. This $1 million is meant to be kind of a gap funding or just another piece of debt in that capital stack at a lower cost. So the rate on this is 3%, say, because I'm not sure if these are going to be senior housing or not, but let's just say the debt is 3%. So it's typically going to be lower than what you could get in a traditional market. We do have the project. So the total project cost, for example, of the Summit Ridge, the total project cost for that award is $24,406,699. And they were awarded $1 million. So the $1 million itself is not providing, obviously, 130 affordable units, but the project itself is providing that number of units.
Okay, so in practice.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, so in practice, the loan amount or the grant amount was not anywhere close to 20% of the project cost. It was far less.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are relatively large projects. When you're thinking, Summit Ridge is 70 units. The Canyons, I'm just talking about the Madison examples, are 60 units. So you have project costs of around $24 million for each project. And so they received the max of $1 million because they exceeded that. That was the lesser of the 20% of the project. And that was kind of written in that way. So then you couldn't have like 2 or 3 developments exhausting that total $100 million that we have available.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
I have another question. So you've mentioned several times that historic tax credits make a project ineligible for these funding sources. However, can one apply for, say, 9% tax credit project and these funds simultaneously to, in essence, fill the gap?
Yeah, these programs can be paired with housing tax credits.
Yep, thank you.
Definitely. Yep. And the tax increment district and the historic tax credit was just a legislative item that was written into these programs. So that's what makes them ineligible to receive if they've received that financial assistance.
Rebecca, it's Joyce again. Is there a definition on what a main street consists of? Because technically we don't have a main street or a downtown. But when you talked about the potential for that second floor units, is there something that actually defines what a main street is in this legislation?
It does not have to be. Right. And this was taking kind of the actual name. It doesn't have to be located in a downtown or Main Street area because there are communities that don't necessarily have that downtown or Main Street area. But the qualifications would be the second and third floor above commercial space. And then, of course, the 40 years of age for the building, if not older, and then the significant improvements within the last 20 years.
And is this strictly for rehabbing, or could you get a loan to assist with construction of second and third floors over the top of existing commercial space?
It could be for construction as well. So, the qualification would be that it's, vacant or underutilized. So, it could be for that rehab of housing that's maybe underutilized, or it could be for the construction. One thing with this program to keep in mind is that the max loan amount is $20,000 per unit. So for construction, I know that would probably be, that subordinate debt. And depending on the project size, with the Restore Main Street, the nice thing about this program is that there's no minimum unit size. So it could be 4 units that could apply for this program. Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
All right. And then so just to, in the vacancy to vitality, each one of these programs has their own page dedicated. The term sheet is out there. The award plan for these programs are out there. The FAQ link is out there. There are some good questions here, so I will definitely be in touch and hopefully we can get some of these added to those FAQs as well. And then there's like a sample application, so you can take a look at what that application looks like. And then we do have like a presentation type PowerPoint that has kind of some of these bullet pointed items for each one of these programs. So you can reference those as well. And so the next product is the infrastructure access. So I will say that this is something that we're still working through. So the term sheets and the award plan for this one have not been published yet. So I'm assuming there's going to be some questions. So there are some questions that, I may say, we need to wait for the term sheets to come out. But what I do know is what is in this presentation right now. And I know that a lot of people are looking forward to this, this funding round coming up. So the overview is that the infrastructure access will allow a developer and a governmental unit to apply for a loan to help cover the cost of installing, replacing, upgrading, or improving public infrastructure related to workforce housing or senior housing. So financing will be provided by WIDA through a revolving loan fund that is subordinate to other funding sources. And the purpose is to cover housing infrastructure costs, and eligible borrowers are developers and municipalities. And we'll talk about how that kind of works in the next slides. So again, the affordability component is the same. Apartments or rentals are reserved for families earning up to 100% AMI, and for homeowners, 140% AMI, and then the affordability must remain in effect for at least 10 years. So the developers can apply for the lesser of total infrastructure costs, or 20% of the total development costs, including the land of the home supported by the project, whichever is less. The governmental unit can also apply for the same project and apply for the lesser of the public infrastructure cost, or 10% of the total development, including land of the homes supported by the project. So the idea here is that the developer, so I'll just kind of go through the process. The developer can apply on their own for the 20%, and they can call it a day. If they want to support the project fully with that 30%, they can partner with the municipality, where the developer could apply for 20%, and the governmental unit could put in a subsequent application partnering with that developer to get an additional 10% of infrastructure funding to make up a total of 30% of that infrastructure funding. The municipality or the governmental unit cannot apply on their own. They have to apply with the developer. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there to set the stage. But the rates for this funding is 3%, or 1% for small communities with fewer than 10,000, or 1% for senior housing. So the set aside for this is the largest pool of that $525 million. This is at $275 million for the total program. 30% of the funds are set aside for project in that 10,000 or less population. 25% of the funds are set aside for projects that are supporting senior housing. So again, one person in the home must be age 55 or older. And then this is unique to the infrastructure access loan. This is one where they want to geographically space out the funding. So areas served by regional planning commissions can receive up to 25% per planning commission of the pool. So if the pool is $275 million, how we're understanding that is that one area served by a planning commission cannot receive more than 25% of that total $275 million. So the infrastructure definition, and this is taken directly from the actual act, is housing infrastructure that in portion of the installation, replacement, upgrade, or improvement of public or private infrastructure in rural areas if transferred to public use. Now, it does say in rural areas, but it is available statewide. This is just the context taken directly from the verbiage, but it is available statewide. So these are the listing for what it could be utilized for. So I'm not going to read all of these. I'll just leave it for a couple seconds so everyone can take a look at what that could include. So a lot of different uses there for infrastructure. And so the eligibility for this program, sewer or water service area plans have been amended if necessary. The land is currently zoned to permit residential use. Again, the same thing, it has not claimed state or federal historic rehab tax credits or received financial assistance due to an active tax increment district. All other development funding must be secured and all permits and approvals have been obtained. And then again, the governmental unit has to have shown some kind of cost reduction for the eligible project. And the governmental unit has to have updated the housing element of its comp plan within the last 5 years. And the comp plan in general has to be adopted within the last 10 years and compliant with state statute. So how it works. So the developer would select the site. The municipality and the developer would identify the infrastructure need. The municipality and the developer would work on the application. So again, there's a lot of different parts of the application. Like one example is a cost reduction analysis that the municipality would have to do to show that they've reduced those costs. The developer would apply for the infrastructure funding. The municipality could, if they wanted to, apply either concurrently with the developer, or the municipality could apply in a later round. So it doesn't have to be within the same round. So the developer essentially could apply, let's say, in this first round that we're looking at doing in the spring, and then the municipality could follow that in another funding round later this fall, let's say. WIDA would review applications and would announce the awards. And then we would repeat the cycle when we open the funding round. So again, we're planning those 2 funding rounds per year until those funds are exhausted. And so again, our anticipated timeline is that mid-April, we will have the term sheet and the award plan and application available on our website. Right now, we do have an infrastructure access page with the basic information that I've just shared with you. But then as we continue to kind of work out, and one of the great things about doing these presentations, and I'm sure you're going to have some great questions that I may not know the answer to, that then we can help kind of shape those term sheets to make it clear for everybody. Mid-April, we'll be having the deadline to submit those work center requests for the municipality that could be applying, or the developer that could be applying, because you apply online. And applications due April 30th, and then awards announced in late May or June. And then again, the announcement in that award plan will be announcing when that subsequent funding round is. I don't have that date as of now. So that's the infrastructure access. So I'm assuming there'll be some questions. So that's all of the slides that I have.
Yeah. So this could be used in conjunction with V2V or the Restore Main Street?
Yes, I believe that it could with the funding. It would have to make sure that everything kind of lines up and works out well. But there could be some infrastructure needs, especially if the vacancy vitality might need some improvement of the infrastructure and things like that.
Just a question on how much or how does it quantify what the cities, they must show that they've done some cost reduction, but is there a minimum that the city has to itemize dollar-wise, or is it a percent of the project dollar-wise that then qualifies or makes them be able to qualify?
We don't have a set dollar amount that we're looking for. Like I said, there is some flexibility and some latitude in calculating that. So you just need to show your work and calculate that. Again, if it's, project specific. So if you are working with a developer and you're getting down to the wire to say, hey, the developer XYZ wants to apply for vacancy to vitality. This is what our municipality is doing to reduce costs. Does this qualify? Those are the answers that we can answer project specific wise. So we can help with that.
Does anyone have any other questions?
But there is no set number.
Rebecca, can you make your PowerPoint available?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to make one tweak on that one slide that we had, and I'll send it over. And then I'll also make sure to share the program specific links. I'll share a link so you can subscribe to our email list, and then I'll also share the link to our FAQs. And then Joyce, I'll get back to you with some of these questions, and then you can share with the group. I have, one of the questions is, define significantly improved for that 20 years, and then also for the home ownership options, seeing if a condoization of a project would qualify for home ownership. I think those are the ones that I need to get back on.
Rebecca, I've got one last question, and this is just kind of random. I haven't developed in Wisconsin, so I don't know. Would this infrastructure program play okay with CDBG funds? If a project has CDBG funds in it, can you also use these funds as well?
There's no restrictions on receiving CDBG funds or other funding sources except HID and the historic tax credits.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have one question. So the municipality portion, the 10%, can that be a pass-through to the developer, or is that something that the community has to invest?
You know, that is a question that we've received, and so we are doing some work to look into that to see how that would play out. We are working on an answer to that question.
Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, good question.
I think that's it, Rebecca. Thank you very much for your presentation.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And Joyce, I'll get you those links and the presentation as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I think the next item on our agenda is Phil Groupie talking about sustainability. Hi, Phil. How are you?
Hi, great. How are you doing?
Good. So, Phil, we're going to talk about sustainable baseline assessment and strategic goals draft that we have that was distributed to everybody.
Yes.
So,
yeah, hi, I'm the city's sustainability specialist. Held a couple of meetings last week with staff to sort of update where we are at with our sustainability plan process, what we've done so far, and what's coming up next. Joyce asked that I bring that to the HAC as well. So I'm here this evening to do that. What's in your packet is actually the kickoff presentation slides that our consultant shared with our planning team back in December. Didn't really have another slide deck available that fit. I sort of selected some slides from this deck to share with the staff at those meetings. So I shared that with Joyce as well for this, and I'll bounce around a little bit of that here to sort of give an update of just of where things are, and hopefully, if you have any questions, we can talk about where that pertains to areas of interest for the Housing Advisory Committee. So I'll pull up a quick screen share here. So I know that I didn't bring this to the Housing Advisory Committee last year, so I'm not sure what your familiarity is with this process right now. But Common Council budgeted $50,000 starting last year to bring in a consultant to help us put together a sustainability plan for the city. This is something that the Resource Conservation Commission has been looking to accomplish for years, and the staff have talked about it. There's never really been staff time available to make this happen internally or budget allocated to bring somebody in from the outside. So last year we were able to actually start that process, put an RFP out, and brought in a consultant from the Twin Cities area, Pale Blue Dot, which this firm has pretty significant experience working with other municipalities on climate action plans, sustainability plans, and the like. So we really got a great feeling about Pale Blue Dot from the presentation last year, from some conversations with them, and we've been working with them since last summer. You can see with the map that was included in your documents some pretty substantial experience across the country. They've mostly focused in the upper Midwest, quite a few clients in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Illinois. So essentially what we're looking to do is, in creating a sustainability plan, or as Pale Blue Dot refers to it here, a sustainability action plan, the city already is doing quite a few things pertaining to sustainability, whether we're talking about renewable energy and energy efficiency, or native plantings, and working on some habitat restoration, things to try to work through with our Healthy Neighborhoods initiative, and more initiatives to ease affordable housing, things like that. The difficulty for me coming in as a sustainability specialist is there are so many different things the city is doing, and depending on whoever's filling my role, and I'm the second person to have this role full-time with the city, the fourth or fifth overall since it was initially created as an internship, there's really a lot of different directions that this role can go. And so what a sustainability plan would allow us to do is to set a little bit more of a kind of a set of guideposts of goals for what are the city's priorities vis-a-vis sustainability, and prioritizing what should be the primary areas of focus, thinking about things like the potential impact, the cost, both financially and in terms of staff time, available partners that we have around the region as well. So we have been doing a lot. The hope with the sustainability plan is that it's going to take some time to get this going and to sort of hit the ground with it once the plan has been produced. But then that should hopefully accelerate what we're able to do, just because we have a little bit clearer sense of what our top goals are and how to go about achieving those. So with the sustainability plan, there are a couple things that we're looking at here. Initially, we were just looking at municipal actions. It's really hard to disentangle that from the broader community. And beyond that, the whole of Fitchburg, just if we can make inroads in the whole of Fitchburg, that's going to be much more impactful than just a municipality, where the residential and business community of Fitchburg has 80 to 100 times the energy use of the municipality. So we had early on talked about just focusing on the municipality, decided to expand that further and make this really something that is that can be a set of shared goals for the entire community. And then looking at this from two different angles: one, mitigation, trying to actually reduce our contribution to climate change and other issues with nutrient loading and chemical runoff into waterways, damage to ecosystem, things like that. And then adaptation. Ideally, you'd like to mitigate and reduce negative occurrences. Once you get to a point where we already see some impacts of climate change, and we understand that's having measurable effects on us already. So how do we make sure that we can adapt to that, become as resilient a community as possible? So kind of the two different avenues for actions here. We've divided this up into a number of different sectors just to kind of help us compartmentalize all the different things that we're considering. Through all of these, we're trying to make sure that we're focusing on equity as well. And so there's not a separate section for equity within the sustainability plan, but we really are looking to make sure that that's embedded throughout all of these different areas. I'm very well aware with a background in more heavily in the environmental sphere that for too long was kind of just the realm of a narrower set of demographics than is representative of the whole country or even of the community of Fitchburg. So we really want to make sure that this is about more than just environmental action, just like the whole of sustainability. We want things to be protect the environment, but also work towards social equity and economic viability. So trying to wrap all those ideas up in the sustainability plan. And then kind of drilling down from the top, we start with our high level goals. What are sort of the high level, one example in our 2019 Clean Energy Resolution, we have a goal of 25% of the municipality's electricity coming from renewable sources by 2025 and 100% by 2030. So that's our high level goal. We can have strategies on how we would accomplish those goals, and that might be, well, we want to do a combination of rooftop solar on municipal buildings, ground-mounted solar if it's available, and then also purchasing specific renewable energy credits from the utility or their locations, and to some degree, whatever extra energy we buy from the utility is going to have renewables in that grid mix. And now we're getting into more of a strategy that's a little more specific without getting into really narrowly defined actions. Once we get to the point of having our goals and strategies figured out, then we look at actions that are actually going to help us get to that point that we can put a little bit more thought into plotting out the specific steps that will get us to our strategies and goals. And several different types of actions that we can take. Probably the ones we prefer to do the most are things like leading by example and advocacy, using a lot more kind of soft influence rather than the hard influence. I think there's a lot of negative sentiment surrounding the bottom right corner there, requirements, putting ordinances and codes in place. We have limited availability to enforce a whole slate of new ordinances, and that's just not, that's often proven not to be the most effective way to accomplish these things. So really want to lean heavily on example, advocacy, and incentives where we're able to do so, both as a municipality and in working with partners that we identify, whether that's Dane County, neighboring cities, businesses, nonprofits, things like that. So sort of the process by which we're going to get to this plan, and I'll actually jump ahead a little bit here. We started last summer working with Pale Blue Dot to collect baseline data, to conduct a greenhouse gas inventory, look at, they conducted a vulnerability assessment, so looking at a lot of data available through things like the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, and U.S. Census, and overlapping different data layers to figure out which parts of Fitchburg are vulnerable to different types of environmental impacts, looking at things like flooding and heat island effect, where you have solar radiation can actually create a higher perceived temperature in certain areas because of things like more blacktop, less tree cover, and some other vulnerabilities, vulnerable to ground level emissions, to climate impacts. We also looked at a ground cover study that has some overlap with that, and looking at renewable energy potential. So all of these baseline documents were created by Pale Blue Dot, essentially to give a sense of where Fitchburg is right now. It's difficult to chart a course forward if we don't know where we are and where we've been. So they looked at data from the last 8 or so years. They took 3 different snapshots, 2014, 18, and 22, to give us a sort of a look at a trend line for where Fitchburg has been and where we're progressing, where maybe we're not need to redouble our efforts. So that's all been completed. That was last summer and fall. In December, we started these planning team workshops. So we've got a team of about 20 to 25 individuals from Fitchburg, a couple with connections to Fitchburg that don't actually live within the city, but do have vested interest in the community. A couple of staff members there, a couple of representatives from the farm community. This planning team is taking all of that baseline information and working right now through recommended goals that Pale Blue Dot gave us for what they think might be reasonable goals for Fitchburg to set as its strategic goals for this plan. So we want to go through those goals, set the goals and strategies, and then go back a few slides here. Then we get to creating these actions that I guess this is not the slide I wanted. Sorry, it's the other direction. Looking at a series of actions that will help us to get us there. And one of the really cool things that we like about Pale Blue Dot, because they have so much experience with a number of different cities, they've got this action finder tool where we're going to be able to look through, if we're interested in actions in waste recovery and management, increasing recycling, if we want to look at reducing salt loading into local water bodies, opportunities to reduce the energy burden on low-income housing, we can go through this action finder and say, well, what have other municipalities put into their plans? What have they been working on that we could take as examples? And so this is kind of using some crowdsourcing from previous clients at Pale Blue Dot that we'll be able to do to kind of help us if we're maybe running into walls anywhere at thinking of new ideas for Fitchburg. This can kind of help to get the creative juices flowing. So once we've got that all put together, we're going to have our draft plan. And I guess I skipped over one section here that we've had an online survey available since the autumn. I don't know the exact number right now. I'll find out tomorrow when we have our next planning team workshop. But last I heard, we were over 550 responses from the community. I was hoping to get us to 2%, so over 600. I'm not sure if we're going to be there, but certainly among the top couple per capita response rates that Pale Blue Dot's ever had. So we've had really good input from the community. There were a few slides at the end of this, if you read through, that essentially showed that respondents in the survey feel like they know a decent amount about climate change. They're very concerned about it. They think that the city should be taking a leading role in trying to get Fitchburg to try to reduce our impact on climate change and help the community to create that resiliency, that adaptation ability. So anyway, we've taken all this background information. By the late summer, we're going to get to a point of having a draft plan. We'll bring that around to staff again, to some public information meetings to get further community input, and then also to relevant committees that we'd like to hear from. And then once we've done that additional engagement, then we want to get our final plan, bring it to council by late October at the latest, and be able to actually have this voted on and put into place essentially as an advisory document for the city. So skipping over quite a few slides in here that were a little bit more specific to the planning team in December. But that's kind of a high level overview of what we're looking at in terms of the sustainability plan, what's coming up next. Can stop sharing my slides here. Yeah, I can pause there if anybody has any comments or questions, or.
Well, Phil, maybe I'll help you out a little bit here. How's that? So one of the reasons why we decided to have Phil just kind of give some background is our Efficiency Navigator program, for one thing, is going to have some impact on where our numbers come in at. When we went out with Sustain Dane and did the neighborhood assessment with Jack, we were able to look at one of the target properties that we looked at in the Jamestown area, and we just went out to MG&E, and we were able to take a look at the what that one unit paid for utility costs, and one unit had a $400 utility bill. So we feel like the work that we're going to be doing with our Efficiency Navigator program is going to be very targeted and very beneficial, not only to the residents, the owner, but also to the environment. So when we were talking to Phil, we mentioned that we also have a general housing fund. So we felt like it would be good to have them come, or to have Phil come, and as we evaluate programs, we can also keep in mind that not only the benefits to the residents and the property owners, but the benefit to our sustainability plan. The sustainability plan will also allow the city to maybe look at some grant funding that we might not have been able to go after because we don't have a plan in place. So we think it's important that we work with our counterparts in all departments and give input. So is that a good analysis of why you're here, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly interested in hearing additional input. So I have been familiar with the Efficiency Navigator work, having heard about it from my peers in Middleton and Madison. We Dane County sustainability municipal professionals meet on a monthly basis and just talk about what we're working on, sharing ideas, partnering together in different things. And there are so many different ways that sustainability is touched on that it's really impossible for me to understand and keep up with 100% of what Fitchburg's doing. So I only found out a month or two ago from Joyce that she's been working on this Efficiency Navigator programs. I've got a plan to sit down with Joyce and Mike and figure out what else I've been missing. That's one thing I'm really excited about with this plan, is just getting an opportunity to learn a little bit more about those things where I maybe have some blind spots right now in terms of where Fitchburg's already been making progress. And certainly those are some avenues, as Joyce mentioned. I'm curious if there are any other thoughts about Fitchburg's approach to sustainability, and for this committee, especially from the equity standpoint and broad community economic health, if there are things that should be called out that I want to make sure you want to make sure aren't missed as we're creating our draft plan.
Hey, Phil. I'll just, I guess, point out, apropos to Joyce's comments about the high utilities, having energy efficient buildings is certainly, it's part of the plan, and I think that's certainly an equity issue here from a monthly utility expense perspective, as well as, if we, depending on how we do this, if we go all the way to something like a passive house where, new construction has energy recovery ventilators and are, tight air sealing, then the air quality also goes up, and people with allergies and such have relief indoors. Other things within the plan, the transportation and land use is huge. If we can concentrate affordable housing along the BRT line, that will certainly help. And then, mixed use neighborhoods, apropos to our previous presentation from WIDA, if we, getting housing and retail space within easy walking distance of each other, that'll reduce car use and obviously help with greenhouse gas emissions and reducing required pavement as well. Just some random thoughts, I guess.
Hey, Phil, I have a
Yeah,
question.
thanks. Not so random.
I have a question, Phil. So I'm going to admit that I just took the survey when I got my meeting packet because I'd never seen it before. So what are your thoughts about, I think the survey closes then at the end of February, is that right?
We're closing the survey on, I believe, Wednesday.
Okay. So, and no thoughts as to keeping that open for a while to try to get more responses?
We had actually initially talked about closing it at the end of December, and we wanted to keep it open longer to increase our response rate. At some point, we want to hear from as many people as possible. We know we're going to miss some folks, and we kind of had to pick a date that makes sense where we can start taking that survey data and using it to help inform our planning team meetings.
How was the survey communicated to residents? I mean, how was that information disseminated so that people knew where it was that they could, fulfill that survey?
Yeah, so I have a green e-newsletter I send out about every other month, and I included information on that a few times in there. Spoke with Jeremy at Fact TV multiple times about that, and I know that he was working to help share that information as well. It's on the city's website, linked in a couple places. I also shared information on it with city staff and a couple of other committees, as well as the mayor and alders a few months ago. And then late December, maybe early January, I took flyers around and shared them with a number of apartment complexes in the city, either directly with property managers or reaching out to owners and asking them to disseminate that to residents. So I know I didn't hit everybody, but did work through a number of different channels to try to get the information out there.
Sure.
I also see that there was an article from the Resource Conservation Commission that appeared in the Fitchburg Star back in December that talked about the survey.
Right, thanks. Yep. Yeah, I wrote that article, I think, on the sustainability plan process in general and called out the survey there.
Does anyone have any other questions?
I'll just point out that we've got some money in the budget for this coming year to hire a communications specialist for, specifically for things like this, because I think there's an awful lot that happens in the city that citizens aren't aware of. And so it's been identified as a need.
Okay. All right.
I would just comment that part of the reason for having Phil come tonight was to kind of engage with this group, since some of the recommendations will be housing and building construction related. So to not just wait on the back end, you know, when there's a plan with recommendations and everything. So that way, if you want to offer input and, you know, kind of follow along, you're connected into the process, you know, here.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks very much, Phil, for coming. Appreciate all the information you gave us.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be happy to answer any other questions if you want to shoot an email or pass anything through Joyce or Mike. Yeah, I'm available.
Perfect. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, I think the next item on our agenda is the staff guide that we received in our packet. If anybody had any questions about that when they reviewed it. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
This was just an internal document that was put together to help more from a education information for all committees. So that way we have a little bit more of a systematic process and procedures, and everybody kind of has that same information. So I think it's a helpful resource and guide.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a report from the department? Joyce?
Sure, I'll give this. Just wanted to give you some updates. We received our final memorandums from Quarles and Brady and H&A regarding our rent-to-own townhouse project. We will be taking that to administration for a final review. Once that happens, we'll be bringing it forward to the council to get reaction on whether or not we want to move forward on that project. Olivia, could I get you to do an update at our April meeting on the regional housing strategy? We had Kurt Paulson, the professor at the university. He was at the Greenfield Neighborhood Steering Committee meeting with the presentation. He actually offered some really, really good information that maybe you want to give an update, or would you prefer that we ask Kurt to come out? I think it was a little early that when he gave the information. I don't think it's been presented to everyone yet.
Right. Thanks, Joyce, for the request. The report has not been published yet, and in the next few days, I'll probably have a new report release date. And because it has not been released, I'm not doing any presentations until at least we have a release date. I'm hoping, in the next 6 weeks we'll release it. But I don't want to put a date out there until it's firm and everything is good to go. So, he might have shared information that came to light during the planning process. Hopefully he didn't share anything from the report, but I would be the person to give the RHS presentation.
Great. I'll check in with you then before our April meeting and see where we're at. Next week, Mike and I will be having a debrief with our financial advisors, Ellers, in regards to the TIF and affordable housing request.
A private sector partner, this is the one that we're looking to do a pilot program with the building that's under construction right now on Index Road that Dementia Capital is doing, 170 market rate apartments. And we're looking at a pilot that we learned about in Shorewood Hills, possibly 10% of the units at 60% of median income within a market rate building through tax increment district number 10 that we amended last year, and we brought this property in. So the developers just got an updated pro forma to Ellers. That's what we've been kind of waiting on. They just needed to get some updated numbers for us. So those are in. Ellers has had a chance to review those, and that's going to be the debrief that we get next week, Thursday, with them, just to kind of look at what is the gap, what will it take, and then kind of discuss some of our program parameters and ideas. Because I think we'd like to pilot it and try this and see if it works. And I think if it does, I know there's some other developers that have already been asking some questions about, can it be done elsewhere geographically in Fitchburg? Mm-hmm. So we'll give you a report on that at the April meeting, or maybe we'll have something actually to bring you at the April meeting. But quietly, we're making progress on some of these things.
So just a quick update on the Efficiency Navigator. We met with Sustain Dane about 2 weeks ago to kind of walk through the contract and how that would work with our finance department and our city policies. So I think we made some good progress on that. So hopefully at our April meeting, we'll have a report where we're at. Hopefully by that time, maybe we'll even have a contract in place. We'll let you know. And then I just wanted to mention, since you had an opportunity to look at the sustainability report, we still have dollars set aside for just regular housing programs. So we can start talking about that maybe at our next meeting too, based on what we read in the report, maybe some other ideas that you might have. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was the park and open space plan. If you recall, one of the items that the Housing Advisory Committee had sent a memo to council was to review the fees within that plan. So we checked in with the planning department and the parks department. They haven't finalized the plan yet, but when they do, it'll come to you for review and comment. We're not quite sure timing-wise how everything will work, but we will make sure that you'll have an opportunity to share your input for sure with CETA, and they can make recommendations to that as well. So we just wanted to keep you up to date that we haven't forgot about that element that we wanted reviewed. It's just taking some time.
And as soon as it gets referred out, then it'll get routed to this group.
We're hoping.
Yeah.
Within the parks and within the park department's kind of timeline of getting it approved. So I think that's the only thing I have.
Last thing is, you might remember in the 2024 budget, we've got a housing position that was authorized by the mayor and council. So the position description was drafted and sent, working with our HR department, looking at multiple Madison positions and other community positions, Sun Prairie, other places. And so it's getting scored right now at a kind of a human resource to figure out where it fits within our organizational structure and classification. So hopefully we'll get that back soon, and then we'll work with HR to start the actual kind of posting and recruitment process there to get some added capacity to focus on housing specifically.
So we'll be discussing at April the Quarles and Brady comments on the rent-to-own program, or will that be pushed off till June, do you think?
We're hoping
April?
Yeah, as long as I get kind of the collective nod from administration, on it, that's kind of the next step for us internally.
Okay.
I can just share with you.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I can just share with you that as part of the regional housing strategy, we did get approved a new position for the county, a new housing planner for the county. So just wanted to let you know that, because we're going to be posting a position description probably in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, more housing planners, the better.
Absolutely. Thanks, Olivia.
Olivia, I have a quick question for you. The meeting that you had with the Realtors Association on Thursday, the listening session, did you record that?
I did.
Will that be out on the website someplace? I wasn't able to make it to that meeting. I had a conflict, but I'd sure like to listen to it, and I'd love to share the presentation with this group. If you could
So
send
there was
that
no,
to me. Or the conversation, I guess. It was more of a roundtable, wasn't it?
Right, I'm sure, actually, were a few slides, just a few kind of background slides. I can get those from the presenter, and then I'm just sending the link out to people who are interested in hearing it. Yeah, so I'm not putting it on the website because we're in a transition phase with going from strategic planning to implementation. We're creating a whole new website for the Regional Housing Strategy Strategic Action Plan for the next 5 years. So I'm not adding anything to the old website, and the new website isn't up yet. So I can send you a link and the PowerPoint.
Perfect, thank you.
Into the audio, sure. I missed a few meetings, and I feel like I'm a little behind in everything. In terms of the new affordable housing funds that you have available, what are the guidelines for those, or have we not gotten there yet?
We're really focused on the 3 tracks. One bucket is the Efficiency Navigator program. One is affordable with the market rate, and then the other one is the rent-owned townhome workforce endowment. So those are the ones that we've been focused on to date. As Joyce pointed out, maybe there would be future conversations about how else would we deploy some of those, the balance of some of those funds, going forward.
Right.
That's why I think we're anxious to. Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's why we're anxious to see some of the recommendations that come out of the regional housing strategies, to see if there's some other ideas, in there that would make sense for Fitchburg.
Right. I can't remember what the balance is in those funds right now.
It's approximately $8 million.
Great. Thank you. Woohoo.
One comment I would make, though, is we're not necessarily going to have a replenishment of those funds on an ongoing basis there, so we want to kind of be strategic and really leverage those dollars as far as how we deploy those, because we probably won't have another tax increment district that will close that will hopefully provide some additional increment into that fund until probably 2030 or 2032.
And I'll just ask another question, because I was unfortunately missed the community visits that you did, and I think you just referenced this, Joyce, but there was a apartment building or apartment that had an energy bill of $400 a month. I know you toured some of the neighborhoods that were in your neighborhood. I can't remember the program, the neighborhood revitalization program you have. Are you targeting those communities, those neighborhoods, for the energy efficiency? The sort of the work you're doing with Elevate and yeah.
Absolutely. So our kind of targeted area is the 4 healthy neighborhoods that we have. So that's the Jamestown North Fish Hatchery Road, Belmar Duns Marsh, and also the Southdale neighborhood in the former town of Madison. And we're still willing to take anybody that wants to go out that hadn't had the opportunity to go. We would like to take you out just because we feel it's good for everyone to get a feel for these neighborhoods, because each one of them's kind of unique. So
yeah, I'd love to try and reschedule with you, Joyce. Yeah,
sure.
Great. Thank you.
Any other announcements?
Just one question. So we had the presentation from WIDA, and the city, in order for developers or property owners to qualify, need to identify what the city is willing to bend on financially or planning process-wise. Should this group ask city staff to come up with recommendations of what they will minimize in cost or change in cost, waiving fees, so that we have a guide for people that want to qualify for these? Otherwise, when someone comes in and they start this process on a per project basis, it's going to take months for that to happen. Whereas if we get some kind of base guideline started now, there might be an opportunity to promote what the city is willing to do to help drive some of this?
I think one of the areas, that's one of the reasons why we're bringing the park plan forward there. You know, when you look at the fees in Fitchburg, where we were the outlier was in parkland dedication fee in lieu of. Now, that's a community conversation and discussion because that's a value that our community has had, you know, there. I'm not sure as far as the other, you know, fee costs there. There we seem to be in line with other, you know, communities. So I think there probably needs to be a larger discussion at the council level and working with administration as far as, you know, do the elected officials want us to look at the fee structure, you know, here? And do they want us to have that conversation and bring some ideas and recommendations forward? The one that this group specifically focused on, and that was in our memo that we had sent to the council, was the fee in lieu of in the park dedication, to at least ask the question, you know, there.
Yeah, I understand. That was kind of more geared because that was an outlier that was above most of the other municipalities in the county. But this is kind of separate. This is like what will need to be done for a developer or a building owner to apply for these WIDA loans. The city has to have some kind of plan of what those fees are or what those things are that they're willing to waive. So they have to say, yes, for this project, you know, if it has median income requirements for rental, we're going to waive 50% of the park fee, separate of what we're talking about for why the fee was high to begin with, or why they may waive the stormwater requirement if there's, you know, to hit affordability. Because the goal with this is, with WIDA's funds, is to help get so housing is more attainable, and so the city has to show some methodology that it's used in the calculations that she was talking about as to how they're helping the developer hit the attainability pricing for housing, if that makes sense. So whether it's a impact fee for the parkland, or whether it's reducing the building permit costs by 50%, or whether it's the connection fees for water and sewer being reduced by 30%, or whatever the numbers, I'm saying the city has to start analyzing what it's willing to do now so that it can have those answers for the developers when they want to apply for these WIDA funds. Otherwise, it's just going to get skipped over. That's what I'm saying, is we need to be more proactive in figuring out what those values are that we're willing to give as a city to make us qualify for those WIDA loans.
So I'm just going to take this one because this is where Mike and I had a bit of a struggle as to what our role was in moving, because this is really a policy decision. So that's why the last time we had the group, this Housing Advisory Committee, make a recommendation to CETA, and CETA wrote a memo to the council asking for direction. So that's really how we're going to have to do it. So I guess we'll ask that our CETA member maybe bring this up at our CETA meeting next week. We can put something on the agenda. And then we'll also ask that our council person mention that, you know, this is something that the housing advisory, because otherwise we can't capitalize on any of the programs. So, you know, we just have to figure out the right way to do this to kind of make sure that somebody follows through on it. And I guess in the past we maybe didn't have that.
Yeah, I was looking at YouTube for this kind of guidance, but I'm like, yes, do we as this committee need to make a memo to CETA, or just ask our CETA member to bring forth this comment that I'm proposing so that it gets talked about at the CETA level, so then it can get to the city council or however it needs to go through its process. But I think we need to move it forward, otherwise it's going to die.
Well, then maybe you want to make a motion.
That also happened before my time, so I'll need a update, kind of just a little cliff notes or something, so I know. Yeah, okay.
We also should pay attention to timing, right? Because these, you know, she said it's a pretty tight timeline, right? So beginning of April is when things start moving, and mid-April the application is open, and by end of April the application period is closed until the next round. And I don't know, on an ongoing basis, did she even tell us what the timeline was going to be from one round to the next? I'm not sure she did, but
Yeah, she said the next one would be October or
Okay.
November.
yeah. So, I mean, if we want to get in applications in April, that's 2 months away. We got to get moving.
And my guess is it's not a simple process. I'm guessing that, there's a lot of committees involved, and then I'm guessing that there's ordinances, and then there's budget implications as well. So this will be something that's above my pay grade, but I don't know, Mike.
Well, because it involves our budget and the fee structure that's in the budget, and that's already been set, for 2024. So it's probably more of a conversation looking forward to 2025, through our process there.
Yeah, but the budget process kind of begins
In June.
In June, so
Yep.
that's why I'm saying it now, because it will take 6 to 9 months for us to get this even off dead center, I think, and we need to get moving on it. For that, even to be lucky to get October, it's probably going to be more for next April that this is set up for.
One question for you, is it specifically reducing or eliminating fees, or is it also, let's say, an expedited review process that saves the developer time and money as far as getting a project in the ground?
From what I read of the WIDA documents, it can be a combination of things. It can be an expedited process. It can be waiving fees. It could be the city paying for some of the infrastructure versus the developer paying for some of the infrastructure.
Okay.
So maybe the stormwater pond, or, if it services a bigger area. Those are things that the city could look at to do it. It's not just fee related.
Okay. And one other thing I'll just mention that's going to be going on simultaneously here, probably kicking off in April and then commencing or ending in, think about August or September. That's kind of aligning with our budget process as well as, for the first time ever in the city of Fitchburg, there will be a strategic plan process. That's why I was late to this meeting here. We've been interviewing a couple of firms there, so hopefully that firm will be selected, and it's going to be not only engagement with elected officials, but also city staff, as well as the community there, and it's going to be kind of helping to guide us what are those priorities in our community. So that might even be something that as those meetings occur and there's surveys and focus groups and an interaction, that maybe, is a conversation within the Fitchburg community as far as where we want to go. So that could be another avenue to also kind of be part of the conversation.
So do we need a motion then on this particular issue? Yea or nay?
I would say yes. It would make it more official, a formal action, because that's what I'm putting in my minutes now, is just basically action items and a brief description of what was done. So I think for kind of a way to follow the chain of command, I think it should be in a motion.
So I guess I'll make the motion that we request, and I believe our request goes to CETA, so that we request CETA bring this up as an item on their agenda to review all the different facets to qualify for WIDA funding for developers and or the city, because the city can qualify for these too if they show the meeting the requirements.
Could I just offer?
Yeah.
Maybe, because CETA doesn't, we're only advisory then to the council, that CETA
The chain of command, that's why I don't know where we go with it. Do I make the request to CETA, or do we make it right to the council?
Yeah. No, request to CETA.
To request to the city council.
They encourage the council to
Yeah.
start that conversation and review.
Got that, Joyce?
Do we need to be more specific in our request, as in, to review expedited permitting and or impact fee reduction and or fee elimination? So specific. Should we be specific in our?
I think if I put, because it has to be tied to an agenda item, so we'll tie this motion to her presentation. So I think it will be tied to all facets that are required to qualify for the WIDA programs. So that's all the eligible requirements that we check. So I think if we just keep the motion simple to the programming, we should be covered.
Yeah, we want to allow for flexibility and creativity by
City Council.
to direct staff however they want to.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else that we have? Do I hear a motion to adjourn our meeting for this evening?
I so move.
Second.
Meeting's adjourned.